Hey everybody, welcome back. Devin, the OG, the original Grognard here for LnLP Publishing, and we are taking a look at something a little bit different, and we're trying out something new here at LnLP Publishing, and we kind of wanted to let everybody know about it. We are taking a look today at the game Invasions Volume 1, 360 to 650 AD, Barbarian Invasions of Europe in the Dark Ages. From Wisdom Owl Games, and Wisdom Owl Games is run by Philip and or Philippe, and as everybody knows, I'm completely multilingual and butchering other nationalities' names and pronunciation, so I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name because I don't want to embarrass myself. Although German, I do German real well. Philippe, you may know as the driving force behind SGS games on Steam, the computer games. I've done a couple videos on him in the past. He's coming up with a Day of Infamy, which is a hypothetical invasion of Oahu, 1941. He's got the Winter War. He's done probably 10 different SGS games and a lot of really cool topics. So this is more his board game side of design, and he recently released this game. Actually, there were two parts, as you can tell, volume 1. There's also volume 2, which is like 651 to 950. So we're covering about 300-year time period in Europe during the Dark Ages. And what we're doing is we are doing a limited public distribution in the States for his game. Now, this was kickstarted mainly in Europe, and if you're over in Europe, mainland Europe, I'm sure you can get this game with no problem. However, in the States, a little bit more difficult with shipping, but LnLP Publishing has managed to get our hands on some copies of the game from Wisdom Owl, and we are in a partnership to distribute these here in the States. I will say right now, we don't have the store page up yet. It is something we're working on, it being the holiday season and all. David has been furiously working on getting the LnLP Publishing Christmas sale up and running, but we wanted to get this video out so people will be prepared for it. So when it does go up on the store page, you can go ahead and pick it up. Now, we have got Kickstarter versions, which actually come with a couple more expansions, and I'll get into this a little bit, Into the East and Before the Invasions. But I did want to go over the game and talk about the game because it really scratches an itch I have. I love antiquities, Roman era, and Byzantium, and just the Middle Ages, 350 to 950. That is an area that just fascinates me, and I just absolutely love it. And there's not a lot of games that really cover at least at this scale, this wide width and breadth of time. So I'm really excited about this. I haven't got a chance to play it yet. I've gone over the rules, so most everything I'm doing is theory crafting. Now I understand from other people that there are some issues with the rule book, but fortunately over on Board Game Geek there is a lot of support, clarifications, and corrections, and errata on it. I will say that the rulebook is in both English and French, so it's satisfying both those itches for if you're speaking French or you want the English. But let's go ahead and crack this open and take a look at the inside of it and go over some of the game mechanics and how it plays. We got it's a very procedural game. So we got the rulebook, and it is 40 pages. And it is kind of small font. I mean, my poor eyesight, this is probably about an 8, maybe a 10 font. But, I mean, it's very detailed, color graphics, glossy pages. And, I mean, it is very, very laid out, detailed. I mean, I actually think it's a pretty well written rule book. So when it goes over everything, transition to kingdoms, to empires, events. Basically, think of this as kind of a not really civilization, but what you're doing in this game is you're guiding your empire and a whole bunch of smaller kingdoms through the ages, through the 300 years, and you're basically looking to score as many victory points as you can. And basically, here's your victory point tally sheet right here. And each person, when you choose what nationalities you want to do, red controls the Roman, Frankie, Britones, and Cassanis. Greens run Alemanni, Hunai. You see all these different sub-nationalities, barbarian tribes. Yellow is Persia. Blue are the Goths and the Huns and all the different sub-nationalities that they run. But basically, and the game runs for 12 turns. It runs 11 turns if Islam shows up as a random event. If not, it runs 12 turns. So basically, each turn is about, what, 20, 30 years, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's that whole new math. Difficult for me to figure out. But so you're basically scoring points. And the game is 2 to 4 players. So you have this appendices book, which is really cool because it basically lays out, okay, the first scenario, the players and nations. So you got Rome and a listing of all the sub-nations and kingdoms and barbarian tribes that they run. Player 2 is the Huns, player 3 is the Persians, player 4 is the Goths. But very procedural. It tells you everything that happens. So on turn 1, which is 350 to 374, there are 3 raids: Berbers in Africa, the Kushans in Persia, and the Picts in Britannia. And then you have reinforcements: the Alemanni, the Franks, the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Alans, and then then the leaders for Persia and Rome. And so every turn you know exactly what's going to happen when it comes down to raids and reinforcements and like that. And that goes through, I mean, every turn, all the way right up to the very end. So the nice thing is it's all combined here in one book, so you can know exactly what you have to do each turn. You've got your list of calamities that can show up, your table of events that can show up, and there's a lot of them. I mean, 26 right there. Yeah, there's 67 different events that can happen in the game. And then you have each broken down: the Roman Empire, and it just gives you the breakdown of exactly what happens in it, the different things that you can do, you know, all the special rules that are specific to the Romans. And then, of course, for the Byzantians, which I think is kind of funny because they never called themselves Byzantium. So, and the Huns and the Persians, and then the Goths, and then, of course, victory points for each nationality, bonus points. So the Alemanni, they get what they get their victory points for. And of course, it's broken down into every single sub-nationality, because when you're playing an empire, you're not just playing an empire, you're playing multiple lesser kingdoms and barbarian tribes. And the point is to get victory points, and you do that by holding on to your main empire and not having it descend into chaos or degrade into a kingdom and get shrunk. And usually that happens by other people attacking your territories and trying to take your territories away, while you are in turn trying to use your minor kingdoms to get more territory so they can become empires. And you see this rise and fall of empires and kingdoms and barbarian tribes throughout the entire game. And it's really laid out. If you remember the old Jim Dunnigan Battle for Germany, where on one half of the map, 1945, you have the final drive on Berlin. The map is cut in half. On one side, you've got the German player and the American player, and obviously on the other side, you have the German player and the Russian player. Well, on the German and American side, you have the German player playing that side, but on the other front, he's playing as the Russian player, and on the Eastern front, the guy who's playing the German player is also playing the American side on the Western front. So both sides are playing against each other as kind of racing to Berlin, and the American player is trying to get to Berlin while as he's playing the German player, trying to keep the Russians off, and vice versa, back and forth. Really cool mechanic. I think most people know that. This is kind of how this game works out, is that you've got multiple of these little sub-empires and sub-kingdoms all over the place, and you're trying to attack the other players' empires to try to shrink them, and so you can grow your kingdoms and empires so you can score more victory points, and so on and so forth. Really, really cool mechanic. You've also got, this is kind of a sheet for all the Romans. This is also in the appendixes, but this basically goes over everything that was in the appendix. So this is basically your help chart, for all the special rules and everything that can be done. And then the victory points for all your sub-nations. So like you have the Kushans, and of course the Romans, and the Gallo-Romans, and the Byzantians. Again, they never called themselves that. And the Cappadocians, Franks, Britons, and then just, this is all the complete listing of all the sub-formations. Same for the Byzantians. They called themselves the Eastern Roman Empire. They never referred to themselves as Byzantium. Okay, so I'm going to go off on a little rant here. Byzantiums never called themselves Byzantiums. They were Roman. That's all there was to it. Eastern Roman, maybe, but they were Roman. Byzantium is a term that historians started labeling them with in the 1800s. I get it. I mean, what do you want to call it? You call it the Eastern Roman Empire. You want to call it Byzantium. Byzantium's a little less tongue-tied, but yeah, it's kind of one of my historical geek things. Like they never considered themselves Byzantium; they were Roman, and then eventually, Greek. But that was that only happened like after the 900s. Did the Greeks really start to? But they still considered themselves Roman all the way up until Constantinople fell in the 1400s. And then you got the Persians. And you've got all the Persians, Vandals, Gepids, Scots. Now, again, yeah, so you're playing the Persians, but you're playing as the Vikings, or you're playing as the Alans, or the Vandals. They really don't have anything to do with Persia, but you got to remember, or the Hercules or the Jutes. You have control of these, and they are putting pressure on your opponent's territory. So the Scots start off as a kingdom, and if you want to have them grow into an empire, you're going to be attacking, Goth and Hun territory. So that's why you'll find that, all right, these are Goths. Okay, so but Picts. Why do the Picts have anything to do with the Goths? Well, first of all, they're raiders. They don't really are in a kingdom, but they're set up so you will be putting pressure on your opponent's main empires. So those are really, really helpful because, it lays out everything that you need to know. Purchase costs, movement allowances, stuff like that. And I love these counters. These counters are big. Look at these. Look at my thumb is huge. These are good, probably almost 1-inch counters. And all of them are color coded. So, here we have the Picts and the Sards and the Saxons and the Scoti, and that's just a horde, Vandals, and there's 9 of these counter sheets. So you've got plenty of counters. You've got cities. You can build cities and turn them into fortresses and towns. And let's see if we can find a leader. You've got leaders, and leaders usually only around. Now that's just Rex. That's just a generic leader. But there are named leaders. Let's see if I can find a named leader. Yeah, like here's some named leaders. Yeah, turn 2. Turn 3, turn 4, 5. Since each turn is about 20 to 30 years, the leaders only stick around for 1 turn. Some of them occasionally, like Attila, he's around for 2 turns. And leaders really help you out in combat, and they give you bonus draws for event cards. But, you've got all these great counters. Most of these counters are the big size, but the administrative counters are a little bit smaller. And so if you're playing like the Goths are colored blue. Your nationality and all of your sub-nations that you run, your sub-kingdoms, are going to be a variation of blue. So you can really see at a difference. So like this light blue, those are the Visigoth, and then the dark blue are the Ostrogoth, and then the purple are Burgundy. So, you can kind of at a glance tell what units belong to your nationality, or your empire, or your set of empires that you're running. Here's some more. Burgundy, Angli. There's some more named leaders. Rex is just ruler. It's kind of a generic. You'll get events that allow you to have a generic leader for a turn. Doesn't give any combat bonuses, but that one right there is a number of bonus event cards you could pull. And of course, there's naval warfare, and there's trade routes that you have. And so here we are looking at some Roman units. Julianus, Theodosius. Those are Western Roman emperors. Kaiser, Caesar, Stilicho. Just names I remember from my Roman history. Then here's Byzantiums, Valens, Arcadius, Theodosius. Justinianus. So lots of really good, like I said, 9 counter sheets worth of this stuff. And these counters do pop out really easy, and they're rounded corners. I mean, honestly, they're kind of like lock and load publishing counters because we like the rounded corners. So 9 counter sheets of that. You got some really cool dice here, combat dice. And white dice are used for normal troops. Black dice are used for elite troops. And you basically count up how many strength points you have in a battle, and then you roll a bunch of dice, and then the swords represent number of hits, and then for siege, there's siege warfare, and there's some advanced rules, and it's basically terrain will modify how many dice you get or don't get. Leaders will modify the number of rerolls you get. And basically, you're taking number of swords hits and comparing them to each other and inflicting casualties. Now, elite units can sometimes take 2 hits before they're destroyed. There are some that can take 3 hits. The combat is it looks kind of intimidating at first, but when you get down to it, it's just adding up how many dice you have, throwing the dice, doing any rerolls, counting up the number of hits, and bam, there you go. That's how it comes out. Now you got a whole bunch of really cool player aid cards. If I can get the band off of it. So here's the battle table. So you can look at how many units are in battle, and again, if their attackers are in march or straight, they lose they lose dice. Tactics, if elite are present, and then you go on for siege rules or siege warfare. Pretty cool black backgrounds of this. But then each nationality, the 4 different colors, are broken down. Each kingdom and empire have their own cards. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Romans, because I like the Romans. So we got Roman Occidentalis and Roman Orientalis, which is the Eastern Roman Empire and Western Roman Empire. And this is the starting out, because the Roman Empire kind of has got some more advanced rules, because by turn 3, the Eastern and Western empires schism and broke, and they kind of become their own nationalities. And of course, everybody knows the Western Roman Empire really went in decline, whereas the Eastern Roman Empire, the Orthodox Empire, stuck around until the Turks captured Constantinople in 1495, I think it was. But it breaks down all your force pools, and it tells you, like, the Palatine cavalry, elite heavy cavalry, so they're double elite in the capital of Constantinople. Cataphracts, elite heavy horse archers, barbarian auxiliary, and so on and so forth. And that gives you your entire force pool. It also gives you where you get your victory points. So for every turn, you get 1 victory point for each barbarian or Persian eliminated, and each raider eliminated, so on and so forth. Turn 3, each of Armenia Minor, Assyria, Atropatene, and Euphrates, if you control those, and all of Orion's, and turn 6, and so on and so forth. And then your reinforcements, this is mostly your leaders, Julianus, Valens, Arcadius, Theodosius, Marcianus, Zeno, Justinius, probably by that time was the 6th or the 7th, Belisarius, Narcissus, Marcius, Heraclius. So yeah, those are all the leaders that come in. So you're getting leaders with Byzantium every turn pretty much. And the Roman Occidentals for the Western Roman Empire, again, force pool, Palatine cavalry, cataphracts, elite, barbarian, horse archers, yada, yada, yada. Victory points, they have their own specific victory points. Now, they also have minor barbarian tribes and kingdoms, like the Franks. And you can kind of see, on the map shows you where they pretty much set up. So the Franks set up in Gallia. VP bonus, you get 10 points if they become a kingdom, 20 points if they become an empire, and a sword. Their force pool, noble cavalry, heavy infantry, elite infantry, yada, yada, yada. And 5 Rex, which is, again, just leaders. How they get their victory points, if they control Austrasia, Flandria, and then on turn 6. And then their leaders, again, they get 2 units, but they don't get a named leader. They just get a regular leader or Rex. And then there's the minor kingdoms, which are the Armeni, the Armenians, and of course they start up real close to Persia. So you're going to be pushing into Persia with them and hopefully try to make them a kingdom by taking territory away from Persia and then eventually into an empire. Mari, that's one I don't recognize. Looks like kind of east of Numidia on the North African coastline. The Slavic tribes, Rome's successors, and they're kind of spread out all over the place. And of course, you got the Britons, which have most of Britannia, their force pools. Of course, their leaders, they get reinforcements because they're not really a yeah. So how do the reinforcements on this work? Yeah, 5, 6, and 7. They get 6 infantry. Yeah, okay. And then victory points. And the Kusians, these are raiders. Now, they don't really have a territory because raiders are pretty much only good for getting victory points. And anytime that the raiders happen, and you kind of look on here, raids, you can see on turn 1 to Persia, on turn 2 to Persia. Actually, all of it, pretty much every turn, they're going to raid into Persia. And their victory points is they get 1 victory point eliminated while raiding. Each raid counter, whenever you successfully raid, you randomly draw. Sometimes you get a raid minus or a raid plus. And if you get a raid plus, it gives you 3 victory points. You get a raid minus, it gives -1 victory point. And basically what your raiders are doing is, since this is a Roman unit and invading and raiding into Persia, you're getting victory points for trying to hurt Persia. Now, what you can do, there are ways to stop raids, but that country is going to have to invest into protecting those borders that these raiders are coming from. So, yeah, so the raids are coming from Kushiana, and they can only raid provinces that are within 2 spaces of Kushiana. And so if the Persians want to keep the Romans from getting bonus victory points, they're going to have to spend the resources to reinforce that border to try to keep these raiders off. And each nationality has 1 or 2 or more of these. Byzantium only has a few cards because they start off really, really big. But so you take a look at, say, actually, let's take a look at the Persians. Or no, the Huns. Oh no, this is Persia. So you've got Persia, but you can see how many sub-kingdoms and raiders they've got. And of course, Persia, it goes again. Force pool, victory points, and then all their reinforcements with their leaders. And of course, their setup is right here. But they got the Visigoths. They raid from Scandinavia, and they raid with 2 elite heavy infantry, which is pretty beefy. I mean, heavy infantry is hard enough, but elite heavy infantry. But again, raiders, 1 victory point unit eliminated while raiding, 1 victory point for raid minus counter, 3 victory points for raid plus counter. But they only raid on turns 11 and 12. And they can raid 2 Britannia, and there's some special rules for that. The Alani, they start off in Hispania. They've got noble cavalry, so they're going to be pushing up against the Franks. They're going to be trying to press into Frankish territory, and again, their specific victory points. The Gepidae, not one I'm too. The Gepids, kind of familiar about. I think they would eventually become Hungarian. Danubis, the Danube River. The Heruli, totally not familiar with them. The Jutes, there were Vikings from the Scandinavian Denmark area, and they raid into Britannia, or they moved into Britannia. And then the Scots, obviously, Caledonia, Hibernia up north, and then minor kingdoms. Just little, so the Khazars, Vandals, and then, of course, Persia. And then, what do we got here? The green are the Huns. And, so they're spread out all over the place, too. And again, so each one of these cards is actually a set of forces, except for the Raiders. Raiders have, 2 or 3 units at most, but they're just going for grabbing victory points. It's kind of a long game because each turn, each player does something with each one of his kingdoms and empires. So it can kind of get a little bit long, but everything is so procedural and it's laid out so well that you know what's going to happen. Get a bunch of Ziploc baggies. Always like Ziploc baggies that you can throw the counters into. You got event cards. And each player gets to draw a certain number of event cards per turn. And you've got 2 different types of event cards. You got the red-backed event cards, which have to be played immediately as you pull it. And then you've got, is that, no, I was looking at looking at the wrong deck. So that was the red. And okay, yeah, so you got the red and the brown card, the event cards. These you pull and you hold in your hand. Now, normally you get one a turn, but you also count up how many leaders you have, and your leaders have a bonus number of cards that you can draw as well. Named leaders obviously can get you more, whereas normal Rexes can only get you one. But these you can hold in your hand until you want to play them at any time. Like Windfall, play during a nation's income step. Targeted civilization nation gains 10 gold, which is pretty hefty. Tooth for Tooth, play during a military phase stack activation. Target stack gains 2 victory points per enemy unit eliminated during this activation. Can be during a campaign. Alliance, Eye for an Eye. I mean, there's just tons and tons and tons of cards. I really probably should put both of these together. But both these decks get shuffled together, and you kind of can know what's coming up because obviously you've got the red backed and then the brown backed cards. But the red backed cards are play immediately. As soon as you draw them, you play them immediately. Oh, Caravan. This turn's exceptional Caravan being either +5 or +10 instead of +1 or +5, depending if you control something that, or wherever the caravans are. I think there are 4 major caravan routes or exceptional caravan routes. So whoever controls those get bonus cash and, alliances, bad luck, all that kind of stuff. So those are the random event cards that you get to pull every turn. And then there's a second set of event cards that these all get shuffled together too. They're reform, passive, military, and diplomacy. These get all shuffled together too. And again, you kind of know what's coming up because you can see the backs on them. But each player will draw until he has 2 of the same type of cards. So either 2 reform cards, 2 passive cards, 2 military cards, and 2 diplomacy cards. These you got to buy. You have no choice in the matter. When you pull these cards, say you pull 2 reform, or say you draw a reform, and the next card to come up is a diplomacy, and then say there's a military before another reform card shows up. Again, remember, you pull until you get 2 reform cards. Now, you can choose, you look at them, and you can choose which one of these you either take one of the 2 reform cards, or I believe you can also pick either the military or the diplomacy. And honestly, most of these are bad stuff. So you usually want to pick the least bad. That's going to affect you. Like this one is reform. But again, remember, you got to pay for these. If you're a kingdom, you've got to pay 20. If you're an empire, you got to pay 30. Now, one thing you really got to pay attention to is that if you ever go bankrupt, if you ever run out of money, your empire immediately goes into decline, and it's really, really hard to recover for that. So you always want to save a ton of cash for this administrative card draws, because you have to pay for the. And sometimes maybe you just want to. Diplomacy shouldn't be in there because that diplomacy card is just something that shows up that you can do. Usually through event cards. So, all right, so say you pulled a reform card, then a military card, then another reform card. It's like, well, if you don't have a lot of money, well, pay 20 for that, the military. Okay, this one doesn't have any effect on you. You don't get any money out of it. You can use your leaders this turn. There's no effect. I think that's an extra admin card. But, say you're stuck with this reform. Well, you get 10 of your money back. You can use leaders, get another card. But there's a revolt. A revolt strikes a nation. Check the calamity details for the rules. So you go to the book and check, okay, what does a revolt mean? And usually it means putting a revolt counter out. You don't get any money from that. You got to spend military forces. So not all of these administrative cards are really good. In fact, most of them are pretty bad. And so it's usually the decision of taking which is the least detritus to you as possible. And then, of course, for the diplomacy cards, you can form treaties, alliances, tributes, Photiuses, mercenaries, there's graft, marriage. Most of these come through random events, but sometimes you can go ahead and call for an alliance and last for 1 turn. Offer an alliance to the nation of another player. If they accept, the 2 nations become friends and allies this turn. They play at the same turn order based. You may not play it. You may play this card to create an alliance between 2 nations that you control. Yada, yada, yada. So, and then, of course, if Byzantium and Persia, see special rules in the Caucasus. So there's a whole bunch of diplomatic stuff that can go on as well between players. So let's go ahead and put all this back. And let's take a look at the board real quick. One of the things I love about this board is it's mounted. Anybody who's watched my channel for any length of time knows I just adore and love mounted maps. Too much time playing Avalon Hill games back in the day. But I mean, this is good, solid mounted map boards. And let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can take a look. Let's find. There's Danubis. Oops. Come on. Phone does not want to cooperate. Oh, come on. Zoom out. All right. So there's Greece. Let's kind of look into the Byzantium era because, again, I really like Byzantium. So you got Thracia. And then, of course, Constantinople is right here. Cappadocia, Asia Minor, up into the Caucasus. Now, whatever territory you control, there's going to be a number in it. That's basically how much gold you get a turn. Plus, cities will provide you gold. Trade routes will provide you gold. They're all marked on the map. If you control a sea zone and have all the territories adjacent to it, you control the sea zone, you get bonus money for that. So if you're looking at this right now, Thracia is worth 2 gold coins. Constantinople's worth 3. Say if you had Mysia, you'd get 2 gold coins for that. You get 2 for Pergamon. If Macedonia is worth 4, Lydia is worth 5. Now, if you control all of the territory, as you can see, it says right here, Asia, 8 and 7. And then if you control all the sea zone with all the areas adjacent to it, you have mercantile control, which gives you 3 additional. Let's see, where's one of the caravan routes? Let's see if I can find one of the caravanners. I'm not going to spend. Oh, okay. Right down here. Where is it? Right here, Nubia. So that's an exceptional caravan route. So there's a chance for bonus. So if you control Nubia, you're going to get bonus money for that every turn. And sometimes there are events that, well, like that one card we saw that increases it from to 5 or 10 depending. So this is an exceptional route. If that event were drawn, controlling Nubia would give you 10 gold. So you basically take all the territories that you control, and that's how much money you get. You buy your units, you upkeep your units, all that good stuff. You've got the turn record track up there. You've got the treasury track there. This track down here is for if the empires and kingdoms are in rise and decline, or the barbarians, how civilized they are. There's a track there. Intercepting in combat, fleeing combat. A lot of good information on the board itself. So yeah, here's the caravans. And so each turn, okay, so there's 4 major caravan routes, and each turn you roll to see which one is getting the bonus for the turn. Normally it's 2, but I think if you roll for the exceptional, it's a 5. So really, really, really cool concept for the game. Now there are videos out there that have got some stellar gameplay on them. I'm not going to get into the gameplay on this because I can't handle doing 4 players, and if people know how I do my gameplays, probably realize it might be a disaster me trying to run 4 people. But that's what we got so far. Okay, also what we also have is we've got some of the Kickstarter bonuses, and one of the Kickstarter bonuses we have is Before the Invasions, which basically allows you to allow players to relive the century before the start of invasions, the period from 250 to 350 AD, and it comes with a whole bunch of new special rules. Well, not really a whole bunch of new special rules. It's like 4 pages worth. You've got some new minor territories to have, and then a bunch of counters. Let's take a look real quick. Yep, counters falling out. So that, yeah, each of the nationalities get an extra card to work with. And then, of course, look at these big counters. So most units can only take 1 hit before they're eliminated, so that's why there's nothing on the back side of them. Like I said, elite units can take 2 hits, and I think there are some units that technically can take 3. They ignore the first hit and then take 2 more hits and can be destroyed. But, you know, here's some new counters. So that's one of the Kickstarter expansions we will also have available for sale. Let's get this back in here. And the other Kickstarter exclusive we have is Into the East, which basically gives an expansion to the east of the board to basically now include India to be played. And this, again, comes with a really cool mounted map board. That you can put basically to the right and opens up more of the Middle East and pushing into India, which of course means, hey, you get more counters. And I think this is about, again, about 4 or 6 pages of rules to explain completely. Gives the reinforcements. Oh, and yeah, okay. So 4 pages, but it's also printed in French. So there you go. And of course, you get new cards to play with. The Gupta. Like I said, I'm not even going to pronounce the ones that I that I don't know the names of right off the top of my head. So all 3 of the so the invasions and both the Kickstarter exclusives we're going to have available in the store. I don't know what price point we're going to be releasing it at. Now that I've got the video out, that was kind of the I kind of did that for David to get this up onto the store ASAP, but we will be announcing when this gets up on the store. In theory, I mean, like I said, I haven't played it yet. I've watched some gameplay videos. In theory, this seems like a really cool game. Best if you played it with more players, mainly because you're attacking the other players with your minor kingdoms, trying to get your barbarian tribes into kingdoms and empires, while holding off the other players' barbarian tribes and kingdoms attacking into your own territory. So I think that's just a really cool mechanic. So if you're into this period of history, I would really recommend looking at this. We will let people know when it's up on sale on the store. I think that's all I got. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms in the comment section below. I'll talk to everybody later. See ya!